The laboratory lights buzzed softly, a sterile hum against the low growl of the alien world outside. The scientists of the Galactic Genetic Council leaned over the containment chamber, their iridescent eyes reflecting the pale glow of the specimen inside. He was humanoid, mostly, but something in the shape of him resisted categorization. His frame was broad, muscles corded under pale skin laced with old scars that no regeneration field had erased. His eyes were closed, but even unconscious, his presence pressed against the air like a storm waiting for thunder. Dr. Vshar clicked his mandibles nervously. Run it again. The DNA scan must be corrupted. The machine beeped in protest, but it obeyed. Threads of light danced across the holographic display, mapping his genetic structure strand by strand. When the analysis concluded, a digital silence fell, a rare moment of machine hesitation. Then the readout appeared. No known species detected. Around the room, whispers broke out in clicks, hisses, and subvocal hums. No record in the Galactic Genome Bank, said an avian researcher, her crest feathers trembling. Not in pre-expansion archives either. That's impossible. It's not impossible, murmured Vshar. It's human. The others turned toward him. Human? You mean the Death World primates? The ones sealed off from galactic contact after the Reclamation War. His eyes gleamed darkly. Yes, I've studied their biology. But this one? This is different. Before any could respond, the containment chamber hissed. The being inside opened his eyes. Predators across the galaxy had evolved countless variations of threat display. Fangs, bioluminescence, chemical signals, psychic auras, but the look that now emanated from the human's gaze needed no translation. Every instinct in every species present screamed one thing: danger. He sat up slowly, as if awakening from a long dream. His movements were deliberate, grounded, and predatory in a way that bypassed intellect. He didn't snarl. He didn't move fast. Yet every creature in the room took an unconscious step back. Where am I? His voice was low, raw, almost human, but there was something underneath it, a resonance that prickled the skin like static before a lightning strike. You're aboard the research vessel Threxan Prime, Vshar replied carefully. We found you in orbit around the uncharted moon of Varian 9. You were in stasis. The man flexed his fingers, studying them as if rediscovering his body. How long? Approximately 260 standard years. He stood fully then, taller than most of them, body moving with quiet efficiency. His gaze swept the room, assessing exits, tools, weapons, weaknesses. The scientists saw it, and something ancient inside them remembered what it meant to be prey. Vshar swallowed his fear. Do you remember your name? The man tilted his head, as if listening to echoes only he could hear. They called me Kael. For days Kael said little. He was studied endlessly, though the researchers were careful, terrified really, to keep a respectful distance. His DNA defied classification. Human at the base, yes, but altered far beyond natural evolution. Adaptive genomes, regenerative systems that rewrote themselves in real time, and neural architecture that looked closer to weaponized biology than life. But the strangest part wasn't the genetic complexity. It was the recognition. When they brought in bio-trackers from predatory species, Draxian hounds, Scar Reapers, even psychic apex predators from Dalare, they all reacted the same way. At first, they sniffed or scanned the air. Then they froze. Then they lowered their heads and backed away, whining or trembling, refusing to approach him. Predators recognized predators. But what they sensed in Kael was beyond that. They sensed something that didn't belong in the natural order. Something that hunted things like them. Vshar watched the data streams with growing dread. He's not just human, he whispered to himself. He's something the humans made. When Kael finally spoke again, it was during a late shift, when only Vshar remained in the lab. They made me for a war, Kael said quietly, standing before the viewport, gazing at the stars. A war that should never have happened. Far's antennae twitched. You remember now. Kael nodded. Bits and pieces. I was part of Project Horizon. We were meant to defend humanity when the Orion Confederacy declared us unfit for expansion. They thought we were too violent, too unpredictable. His lips curved slightly, not in humor but in memory. They weren't wrong. Shar hesitated. You fought them. I fought everything, Kael said. Machines, Xenos, even the void itself. The longer the war dragged, the more we adapted. We learned faster than they could comprehend. We started changing, rewriting ourselves to survive anything. He paused, his reflection a shadow over the stars. And then humanity vanished. The silence that followed was heavy. Vanished. Shar repeated. Kael's eyes flicked toward him. Not destroyed. Not extinct. Asfin. Like they chose to leave the galaxy behind. But how could an entire species disappear? Kael shrugged. We were never just what we seemed. Humans adapt. When the galaxy turned against us, we didn't fight to win. We fought to outlast. Word spread quickly through the vessel. Rumors, fears, half-true legends. Some called Kael a ghost of humanity's lost war machine. Others called him an abomination. But none dared confront him. Until the Threxan Prime received orders from the Council itself. Transport the specimen Kael to the core for containment and study. No refusal. No delay. Shar protested, but his superiors silenced him. You've done your job. Now the Council will decide what he is. That night, the ship's corridors were tense. The crew whispered prayers in their own tongues, claws twitching near emergency weapons. Kael felt it, of course. Predators always feel the shift in the air before the kill. As the transport vessel prepared for hyperslip, Kael approached Shar one last time. You're afraid, Kael said. I would be a fool not to be, Shar admitted. You are. Beyond understanding. Even our predators sense it. Kael studied him quietly. Predators recognize strength. But they also recognize something older. They know what it means when something stronger doesn't need to threaten. What are you really? Shar asked. Kael's gaze drifted toward the starfield again. I was human once. But after the war, I think I became something that remembers humanity, rather than is. Before Shar could ask more, alarms screamed through the corridors. The ship lurched violently. The deck tilted, throwing instruments across the lab. Incoming vessel, unknown signature, shouted the comms officer over the intercom. They're not broadcasting Council Idaho. A flash of white fire tore through the hull. The ship shuddered, emergency fields flaring. Shar was thrown into a console, his chitin cracking. Through the smoke, he saw Kael standing perfectly still, head tilted, listening to something beyond hearing. They found me, Kael murmured. Shar coughed, pulling himself up. Who? Kael's eyes hardened. The ones who never stopped hunting. In the chaos that followed, the attackers breached the Threxan Prime's hull. They weren't Council ships. They were mercenaries, but not of any single species. Armored forms moved through the corridors with ruthless precision. His vision swam as smoke filled the air. He heard screams, plasma fire, the hiss of depressurization. Then through the haze he saw Kael move. He didn't run or dodge. He walked, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. One of the mercenaries rounded the corner, plasma rifle raised. Kael caught the weapon in one hand and crushed it like foil. The mercenary struck him with a shock baton. The charge rippled over Kael's skin harmlessly. Then Kael reached out, and the soldier was gone, thrown against the bulkhead so hard the metal dented. The others hesitated, their training failing under the weight of instinct. They had hunted across galaxies, faced void horrors and apex beasts, but this was different. Their blood screamed predator, but their bones whispered prey. Kael's eyes glowed faintly, the color of deep-sea lightning. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. The mercenaries fired. Plasma bolts filled the air, but Kael moved through them like mist. Energy flared around him, bending light, warping space. The ship groaned, as if the laws of physics were protesting. Shar watched in awe and horror. He saw Kael reach the boarding breach, saw him look out into the void, and for a heartbeat, the stars themselves seemed to flinch. Then Kael leapt into the black. Later, when emergency crews restored partial control, the Threxan Prime was little more than a drifting husk. No sign of Kael. No sign of the attackers. Only fragments of data, and the lingering sense that something greater had passed through. Shar stood at the shattered viewport, staring into the silent stars. He thought about the words Kael had spoken. Humans didn't fight to win. They fought to outlast. And somewhere deep within the ship systems, a small transmission pulsed into the dark, encoded in frequencies older than the Council itself. The Threxan Prime drifted for 3 days before a recovery team from the Galactic Council found it. Most of the crew were gone, dead or missing, and those who remained whispered only one word when questioned: human. The Council's investigative fleet surrounded the wreck like vultures. Data was confiscated, survivors quarantined, and every mention of Kael was scrubbed from official record. Yet whispers traveled faster than orders. In the criminal underbelly of the core worlds, in the hunting guilds, in the deep space frontier, everyone heard the same story. Creature with no known species. A man who made predators lower their eyes. The Council declared it a myth, a psychological breakdown among survivors. But the predators of the galaxy remembered that old instinct, the one that doesn't lie. And far beyond the core, on the cold surface of a dead moon, Kael opened his eyes again. He didn't know how long he had been drifting. The void was timeless, a vast ocean without shore. His body had repaired itself automatically, cells adapting to vacuum exposure, mind reconstructing neural pathways like a machine restoring backups. The stasis pod that had once imprisoned him lay shattered. Around him, fragments of the mercenary ship floated silently, frozen corpses still clutching weapons. Kael stood slowly, brushing frost from his shoulders. The stars above him burned cold and unfamiliar, yet he recognized them. He always did. "Project Horizon," he murmured. "Still functioning." A faint hum responded from beneath his skin, a biological system awakening. He could feel networks of nanofibers and gene circuits aligning, reconfiguring. He wasn't sure how much of him remained human anymore. Maybe none. But something deeper than DNA still guided him. Something old and stubborn that called itself human will. Across the galaxy, the Council's High Assembly met in emergency session. The holodisplays flickered, projecting Kael's fragmented scan data into the chamber. "This cannot be human," hissed a counselor from the Rephid species. "Their biology doesn't support this level of adaptive evolution." "It is human," said another, a quiet voice belonging to Dr. Shar. He had survived the Threxan Prime barely. His chitin still bore cracks that would never fully heal. But not as you know it. He is what happens when humanity stops fighting others and starts evolving itself. "You mean a weapon?" another counselor spat. Shar shook his head. "No. A survival mechanism. You don't understand humans. They never conquer to dominate. They conquer to prevent extinction. They don't adapt for power. They adapt because death refuses to take them." The counselor sneered. "Then we'll correct that mistake. Dispatch the hunters." The chamber fell silent. The Galactic Predatory Guild, simply called the Hunters, were the Council's ultimate enforcers. Beings engineered and trained to exterminate any threat to galactic order. For millennia, no creature had survived their pursuit. Till now. Kael knew they were coming. He could feel the psychic ripples of their tracking systems before their ships even entered the system. He didn't hide. There was no point. Instead, he walked across the barren moon, toward an ancient structure half buried in dust. A human structure. A remnant from before the fall. Inside, buried under centuries of silence, lay the skeletal remains of a base. Shattered terminals, rusted insignias of the United Earth Defense Command, and a single functioning console blinking weakly. Kael placed his hand on it. The system recognized his genetic key instantly. Access granted. Data flooded the chamber in spectral blue light. Tactical reports, star charts, unfinished research. All relics of a war long forgotten by everyone but him. And buried deep within the code, a final message. To any surviving member of Project Horizon, humanity is not gone. We moved beyond the stars, beyond this galaxy. But we left guardians behind. If you awaken, know this. The predators of this universe will come for you. Show them why they feared us. Kael closed his eyes. For the first time in centuries, something like emotion cracked through his composure. He wasn't the last human. He was the reminder. When he looked up again, the sky above the moon burned with the descending flames of hunter ships. They came in silence, 12 vessels of different species, each carrying elite predators bred for one purpose, to kill what cannot be killed. The first to land were the Karthal, creatures of living metal and blade tentacles. They advanced in formation, weapons humming with antimatter charge. Kael stood at the edge of the crater, unarmed, waiting. Human, their leader rasped through a translator. You are classified as an existential anomaly. Surrender and your termination will be painless. Kael smiled faintly. Every predator says that before extinction. The Karthal attacked. Lightning fast plasma arcs filled the air, but Kael moved before they even fired. His body blurred, muscles reconfiguring, perception expanding beyond light and sound. He flowed through the battlefield like water, every motion efficient, every strike final. A Karthal lunged. Kael caught its weapon mid-swing, ripped it free, and turned it into molten shards. Another tried to flank him. He spun, his arm shifting into a hardened exoskeletal blade that cut clean through armor. Within seconds, the crater was silent again. The hunters above hesitated, scanning their biosensors. Every Karthal signature was gone. Then Kael looked up, and the hunters realized with dawning terror that he could see them. Through the clouds, through the hulls, through fear itself. He leapt. To lesser creatures, space is death. To Kael, it was simply another battlefield. His skin sealed, oxygen recycled, gravity ignored. He landed on the lead hunter ship, tore through the hull with his bare hands, and stepped inside. The crew fired in panic. He walked through plasma fire, his body adapting to the energy wavelength with each impact. He didn't roar or curse. He simply moved, unstoppable, inevitable. One by one the ships fell. From the Council's vantage in the core, the fleet's telemetry vanished in rapid succession. 13 ships. Gone, erased from existence. Shar stood before the stunned council. You see now. You cannot cage what was born to survive. You cannot classify what has already surpassed your understanding. The council leader turned on him, voice trembling with rage. Then what do you suggest? Worship it. No, Shar said softly. Respect it. When Kael returned to the surface, the battlefield was silent once more. The moon's dust glowed faintly under alien firelight, painting him in hues of red and silver. He looked down at his hands, stained with ash not blood, and exhaled slowly. The air was thin, lifeless, but his lungs didn't care. He had proven what every predator instinctively knew. There are creatures you can hunt. There are creatures you can kill. And then there are humans, who were both and neither. His gaze turned toward the horizon where the ancient human base hummed softly, energy surging through old conduits as if awakening from a dream. From deep beneath the ground, the structure began to shift. Metal plates retracted, revealing an enormous chamber filled with dormant stasis pods. Thousands of them. Kael approached, heart steady but pulse quickening. As the nearest pod powered on, its display flickered to life. Genetic signature confirmed. Project Horizon Unit 02. He smiled faintly. You slept well. The pod opened. Inside lay another human, pale, still but alive. And then another. And another. The moon trembled as the systems activated in sequence. Across the dead surface, the ancient defense grid rearmed, signals firing into deep space, toward distant stars where humanity had vanished. Beacon. Oh. Kael stood amid the awakening and looked once more at the night sky. They thought we were extinct, he whispered. But we were only waiting. Far beyond the galaxy's rim, somewhere past the mapped edges of known space, an ancient fleet stirred in answer. Vessels larger than cities powered up after eons of silence. Their hulls bore no insignia of empire, no banners of conquest. Only a single emblem, a stylized spiral, the mark of Earth's lost descendants. The message reached them through the void. Protocol reawakening. On the moon below, Kael felt the pulse in his chest sync with a distant signal. The hunters were gone. The Council would panic. The predators of the galaxy would whisper again. But the truth was simpler than any of them would ever understand. Predators recognize fear. But even fear has a master. Kael turned as the first of his kind stirred beside him. Welcome back, he said quietly. The galaxy forgot what it means to face humanity. Let's remind them. And above the shattered moon, the stars themselves seemed to dim. Not in darkness but in respect. Then,